Hey there, this is Adam's grandmother, and you're now tuned into the Archives with Adam podcast, where every episode dives deep into Adam's brain archives. With each guest, we uncover hidden stories, real memories, and conversations that bring you closer to the people behind the moment. Now, welcome to the Archives.
Welcome back to another episode of the Archives with Adam. Today, I'm joined by Charles on Charlie's Retro Gaming, Retro Reality. You know, he's making a more of an appearance on the show. Charlie, how you doing, man?
I'm good, sir. Driving and getting back home. Safe and sound is the goal.
Oh yeah, man. You had a long weekend, but you know we're gonna give you a chance to relax, and we're gonna be hanging out with. And I swear, this guest, he's been in so many movies, and TV shows that are really gonna dig into my brain archives for this episode. You may remember him from Dude, Where's My Car, to Wizards of Waverly Place, and even The Ringer, which is a personal favorite of mine. Please welcome the incredible Bill Chott. Bill, how you doing today?
Good. I'm driving as well. I'm here in my apartment, but I got a steering wheel, so pardon me if I hit any bumps or anything.
Perfect, man. So you know, we like to really just express what the show's about. As you heard from the beginning portion of it all, it's the Archives with Adam, and it's all about celebrating your career and diving into your brain archives. So again, you know, we thank you for being on, and I do want to give Charles the floor and let him chat with you a little bit to kick it off.
How's it going, Bill? I love what you do and the
Thank you.
movies and all the things you're in and involved with, especially your school, all that fun stuff. But given my background and what I'm known for, first question is always going to be about toys and video games for me. And I'm just curious to pick your brain.
I'm sorry, there was
A toy or
Hey, Charles, you kind of broke up there, man.
a little bit of a breakup. Could you repeat that question?
I was going to say, what was your favorite toy or game that you like to play as a kid?
Oh man. One of my favorite toys, well, the video games that I played, you know, I was in the early days, so you know, I had one of the early Ataris, and I played Pitfall, which was an Activision game,
Ooh.
not an Atari game. And I just saw that the original ad had Jack Black in it. I remembered the kid with the safari hat, but I didn't know it was Jack Black.
Oh,
But I
wow.
got that as my Christmas present, and I played that for half a year because it was one of the first games where you had to like go on a journey. It wasn't just like, you know, like Pac-Man, you're going through a maze. Donkey Kong, it was kind of a journey because there was different maps or whatever. But, you know, this you really had to go through and collect things and do things. So Pitfall was probably my favorite. In terms of toys, I didn't have a lot of toys. I like to play around with, I had a CB when I was like 7 years old or so.
Ooh,
So
okay.
I played around with that. It was totally illegal. I was trying to start a radio station. So I would play. My dad used to write industrial shows, and he had just done this thing for a company called Pickwick that did a bunch of like, you know, LP collections of oldies. So I had all these oldies on LP. And so I would play them, and I would, you know, this is when Happy Days was big. So I would pretend like I was a 1950s
Yeah.
DJ. And so that was kind of a toy for me. Other toys just kind of bored me after playing with them for a little bit. But we had like the Slinky, that one thing where it was like a wire, and then like it would be like a little red wheel on a magnet that
Oh
would
yeah,
pop it around.
you'd sit there and I
Yeah,
remember
that would
that.
hold my attention for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, those were toys that actually made it all the way up to the early '90s or late '90s and early 2000s, and
Yeah.
they've remade those. Oh my goodness, that's like a hog thing to me now.
Yeah. And even my daughter
But
plays
that's
with her
absolutely,
Slinky.
that's
Yep.
what some of the best toys that made America, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Well, cool. Big thing since you are an actor, you do voiceover. I do believe you do love of theater. But what I really would be interested to know, do you have any uh, commercials back then? Because cameras and everything like that were kind of developing, and not to put you in a box back there, but because you're heavily involved in the new era as well.
Yeah.
But were there any commercials that really, really just have stuck with you over the years, and when they've rebooted them in a way, those companies, is there one out there that really just stuck with you?
So just like you mean like classic commercials that I used to watch?
Have you? And I guess the deeper question would be, were you involved with any of them as a
Yeah, I
youngster?
did some commercials back in the day. I did a bunch of commercials for Checkers hamburgers and for
Oh wow!
like there was a whole like they came out with all the different kinds of like burgers that they had. So one of them was a Western burger, and so I'm taking the person's order, and all of a sudden it turns into a Western brawl back in the kitchen. So I get a chair broken over my head, and somebody's trying to put my
Oh
head
wow!
down on the grill. So I was in a whole series of Checkers commercial. One of them became a car commercial. It began as a dream, and so that was fun. I did a bunch of commercials for Taco Time, which is it's a regional taco store that's kind of like you know how Del Taco is kind of like Taco Bell's little sister. This is like Del Taco's little sister, Taco Time.
Okay.
Mostly in the Northwest, I think, is Taco Time.
We got some of
But
those.
I did a series of commercials
There
for
was a
them.
Taco Time down here.
Oh, there is? Okay.
It blew my mind. Me and my homie were here. We were down here in Arkansas, and it blew our mind to see a Taco Time down here. And we tried a few different Waffle House. First time ever being in
Okay,
a
I love
Waffle
Waffle House. I used to tour with
House.
Second City all over the United States. And every city there would always be a Waffle House. And I
Oh,
would always be like, please, can we go to Waffle House? Please. And they'll be like, no, let's try this new place. And would always disappoint. And I'm like, Waffle House
oh,
is not gourmet food, but you always know you're going to get it smothered and covered. It'll be good. There might be a fight going on. There might be some cigarette smoke, but the food, always reliable.
always. All right. That's awesome, man. I kind of wanted to dip into that because I did, obviously we researched and things like that. So I kind of knew you preemptively, you were involved in commercials,
Yeah.
through and through. Um, it's a digital age now, right? So one of my, things that I do, obviously to maintain that retro feel, that vintage nostalgia, right? To keep that captured.
Mm.
What do you feel, and really, I would say dig into your mind and find what will be missed that you've seen through, stand the test of time, and but is nearing the end of that whole. Is there anything really out there like that? And honestly, if I can kind of give you a pointer,
Mhm.
think magic.
Big magic?
I house a lot of magic toys. So do you
Oh,
remember
really?
those training toys that you get on VHS? You could get them on A-Track and follow the books. You could learn how to do magic,
I can't find a
that's
decent
just
laser pen
right?
anymore. Laser pen through $1. I
Okay.
got it years ago, 1996 or 1997, at a Times Square magic shop. I can't remember what it was called, Marvin's Magic or something like that in Times Square. Anyway,
Okay.
I was just getting back into magic again because I've been a magic geek all my life since I was a kid. I had the TV magic cards. I used to get magic kits every Christmas and every birthday. So yeah, if you ever
Oh,
want to unload some of that stuff, talk to me. But I got a magic pen,
we
and it's
got you.
so strong. And when you reveal, I don't want to like give the trick away for anybody, but when you reveal the pen, it didn't stay intact, for lack of a better word. When you'd pull it out of the dollar bill these days, those were so strong that it would stay intact. So that's something that's gone the way of the
Yeah.
dodo, just because people are like, well, it still works, but not as well. It doesn't have as clean of a follow through. Um, so yeah, in terms of that,
What else do you think is out there?
like things that I think it's hard to get anymore.
Yeah, like the fadeaway. What was something back back in your archive mind that you think should come back almost?
Oh, something that I think should come back. Radio comedy. And I don't mean like and I guess in a way it's still out there. I've heard some Audible series that are kind of like that, like 6 years ago or so. But like it's a drama, but it's comedy, but it's a story. There's a sketch going on, you know? You don't see that much. There used to be like the Golden Age of Radio was a
Yep.
group an album by a group called the Credibility Gap, and you had Firesign Theater. Monty Python even had a bunch of records back in the day. So sketch like comedy that was audio, and like the National Lampoon Radio Hour. So audio comedy. You don't find a lot of that anymore.
You don't. They,
You'll,
you
you'll
want to know
see
what they call that
podcasts
now?
where people stand up comedy act.
Podcast.
Not the same
Yep.
thing.
That's yep. Yeah. Nope. Well, thank you so
There's a lot more
much
great
for
comics who
that.
have a lot more of
Oh,
a platform now because of that, because of podcasts and stuff like that, but it's not the same thing.
oh yeah. That's cool. Well, thank you so much for that dive into your toy and thoughts and things like that. Well, Adam, I'm going to let you take the floor with Bill and see what else we got to show.
All right.
Yeah, so Bill, I mean, I'm sure this is one of the most popular topics that you get talked to about is The Ringer. You know, this movie came out in 2005.
Mhm.
I mean, it's such an amazing movie. You know, you play Thomas in the movie, and you know, for the people that don't know, this movie is starred by Johnny Knoxville, but I think everybody was a star because the way it was done was just amazing. It's about his character Steve Barker, and you know he fakes being in the an athlete in the Special Olympics, and his employee that he had a fire, ends up mowing his lawn, cuts his fingers off, and they come up with this brilliant idea for him to be in the Special Olympics. I wanted to ask you because the dynamic of it. How did you immerse yourself into the role of Thomas? You know, a character that you had to portray with intellectual disabilities. Was there a
Right.
specific moment or experience that helped you connect with him?
That was one of the biggest challenges, making sure that it was funny enough and yet still was respectful. Which was the number one goal of the movie. That's why it was being made. Um, I had volunteered to work with people who had intellectual disabilities in the past. And so the character Thomas was based on a character that I often did at Second City called Frederick. And whenever I did Frederick, it was never punching down. It was always punching up. It was always making fun of the people that made assumptions about him. And so when I went in to audition for the part, I went in character, and Barry Blaustein, the director of the film, said, "You're in my picture. I don't know where you are, but you're in it." And so that was great to hear. Took a while for the project to get off the ground because it was pretty controversial. And then I think what really did it for everybody and made everybody's characters a lot more grounded and really helped us build that ensemble that you were talking about earlier was that we went down there for, I think it was like 2 weeks. It felt like a month, but I don't think it was more than 2 weeks. To read over the script, to improvise a little bit, to see if we could find more moments, and to do all of the actual training for the track and field events that we were going to be doing. We had to learn how to do, even if they weren't going to catch it on film, or even if it wasn't going to be in the final project, we had to all learn how to do the hurdles. We had to all learn how to do the long jump. We had to all learn how to do the high jump. That's something I had never done. I never did the high jump in school. I had to do it for the Ringer, and we had to run track every day. And so that was like boot camp. Maybe some of the other guys had been in, athletics in high school and college and were used to that sort of training, but I certainly wasn't. And I know several of us weren't. So our legs would be wobbly trying to walk our way back to the hotel at the end of the day of training and all that. And then we also got to go to Special Olympics events. And we went to a Special Olympic bowling event, and we went on a river cruise there in Austin, Texas, with Special Olympians from all over the world. So we really were immersed, and I think it made all the difference. It helped us build that ensemble feeling. It wasn't just, yeah, it was a great vehicle for Katherine Heigl. It was a great vehicle for Johnny Knoxville, but it was also a great ensemble piece.
It was such an amazing movie. I can't say enough about it because, it just the way the story was told, it really makes you like, you know, sympathize, but
Hmm.
you also are having good laughs. You're watching Johnny Knoxville play two different characters. Uh,
Yeah.
but what was even more amazing is that movie had over 150 individuals that had, disabilities.
Yeah.
And they had roles in that movie. Now, what was it like working with such talented and diverse groups?
Tim Shriver asked me that question. He said, "How is this set different from other sets that you've worked on?" And I told him, "Well, this is the first set that I've ever worked on where I got like 30 hugs a day." Because people would just come up to you and people accepted you for who you were, and they knew that those of us that were in the movie that didn't have disabilities were not there to make fun of them in any way. We were there to honor them. And so, we would get hugs all the time. Everybody was family. Everybody had family on the set. I've never worked on a set where so many people had family come and visit them on the set of the film. In some people's cases, the people with the disabilities, their families were there to take care of them and, make sure that they were being advocated for. But everybody, including the Farrellys, had their families there. Knoxville had his family there, and it was just a very family oriented project.
And you see that in a scene, where Johnny Knoxville's showing up to partake in the Special Olympics, and
Yeah.
there's a scene where I think it's a gentleman. He comes up and he just hugs Johnny, and he's just like, it felt like he was thrown off, like you said. You're on a set and you're just getting
Mhm.
so many hugs, but it's different from his movies like Jackass and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, but I have to ask you, Eddie Barbanel, he played Billy, and he was such a standout. I loved his lines. What did
Yeah.
you learn from working with Eddie, both as an actor and as a person, and even just in general, all those folks that you were a part of?
Yeah. Well, Eddie and John Taylor, who plays Rudy,
Mm.
were the guys on the set that I was probably closest to, and I still am to this day. I'll still get calls from them. They'll chime in and tell me what they're up to and what they've been doing. Um, Eddie was really interesting because he had done a lot of acting on stage and dramatic acting,
Mm.
and the bit that you see there at the end where he's doing the Romeo and Juliet monologue was actually an award-winning monologue that he did.
Wow.
And John Taylor had been in the movie The Seventh Sign with Demi Moore, and he played a murderer who had Down syndrome. So
Wow.
both of them had advocated for people with disabilities, and including themselves, for years. And they had both of those guys had memorized the entire script before anybody else got their hand on the script. They had already memorized it. They would be saying things to me like Eddie Barbanel would come up to me and say, "Did you know Christ was a Jew?" And then I would be like, and I knew that he was Jewish, and I was like, well, that's kind of odd for a Jewish person to say. That's something more that somebody who had who'd been raised Christian and wanted to like make an inroad to somebody who was Jewish to say, perhaps or whatever. But it turned out that was one of my lines. He was repeating my lines back to me, and I didn't have them memorized yet because I was just there to do the Olympic training and to do these events and get to know everybody. And then I'll come back to me. I was like, all right.
That's
And
it.
Eddie, John is really, uh, very internal and very dramatic. And Eddie is like a vaudevillian. He's like one of those old Borscht Belt comics. He's got a joke for everything. He would always say things like, "Hey, Blaustein," Barry Blaustein, the director. "Hey, Blaustein, get me a water," and scene. Uh,
Man,
I'm not sure how many of the outtakes that they save for that movie, but I hope there's some, and I hope there's some that haven't been released yet that will be released someday because
yeah,
there's
I
a
mean,
lot of
pretty
insanity going on that set.
we're almost to the 20-year mark on that movie. It's crazy.
Yep.
I mean, I was in high school at that time, and yeah, it's time's going by so fast.
Hmm.
So we were talking about lines, and you had some of the best lines. I have to say, one of them was during your time at the pool. You were saying I would definitely bring protection.
Yeah.
Uh, it was hilarious to me. And then you just had so many fun lines in there. Was there any hilarious moments for you? Let's say like any lines or any scenes that cracked you up during the film that you had to really keep your composure?
Well, I think everybody's aware of the ice cream scene,
Yeah.
when he says, "When the fuck did we get ice cream?"
Yeah.
Jeff Aaron improvised that line. It was not written by Ricky Blitt. Ricky Blitt wrote an amazing screenplay, but there were some lines in that movie that were improvised, and that was one of them. And it was tough for everybody to keep it together. Some of the fun that I had, a lot of my improv kind of made its way into the movie too, but there was something that like if you hear in the background, you maybe hear a little bit of it, but in that scene at the end when
Johnny and
Steve, I guess his character's name was Steve,
Yeah.
runs down to Lynn and tries to break it to her what was going on, and she slaps him and everything. Or after he announces there on the platform, and I'm up there doing my acceptance speech for the bronze, and so I'm up there talking, and a lot of that was improvised. They said just roll with it because it's not, it's going to be in the background of what's going on. And so I just, would say all kinds of crazy things. And then between the takes, they would just leave the mic hot, and I would be entertaining all the Special Olympians that were there lined up. So I was saying all kinds of crazy stuff about like weird combinations of food, and also my favorite food is gumdrops with mustard. And whatever I would say. I could do no wrong. I felt like a king because I was like, they were like, we got your back no matter what you say or do. So I had some of the most fun in that movie doing that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an amazing movie. I know the ratings weren't there, but you know what? Forget those people,
Oh
The
yeah, I
ones
think over time it's become a huge cult film, and
yeah,
I think we all knew when it came out that they were going to give it a good promotional push, but it wasn't going to be the holiday blockbuster. When you
yeah,
release something at the holidays, there's always going to be one or two other really big budget movies it's gonna hit. And in terms of small budget comedies, it was Us and Grandma's Boy,
yeah, yeah.
I think. And that was a good movie too. I think ours has kind of stood the test of time.
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah.
So yeah, Wizards of Waverly Place, you were Mr. Laritate.
Hmm.
Again, that came out, I think, after I finished high school. But
Thank
man,
you for making me feel old.
it's the archives, right? The archives of that podcast. Are they bringing you back for the reboot? I don't think I've seen anything on that.
Well, I've done the podcast, the Wizards of Waverly Pod,
Mhm.
and talking with David and Jennifer, um, and at that point, none of us had been talked to about it. And then recently, I saw that David DeLuise was on the set.
Mhm.
Um, I think he taped an episode, so I wasn't sure about that. They try to kind of keep it on the down low. I have not been asked to yet. And I think they're close to wrapping on the season. So if they're going to ask me to be in this first season, they better ask me soon. But I would love to obviously make an appearance. I would love to come back as Larry Tate and see what's going on with my former students.
How did you get that role? What was going through your head when you even got the call back for it?
At the time, I had bought a house back in St. Louis, Missouri. And at first, it was just because there was a writer's strike going on, and my wife at the time and I thought, you know what, we're not going to be able to buy a house in L.A. for years and years and years. But here, I had just done the movie The Ringer. I had some money. I was like, let's buy a house back there, and maybe we could turn it into a rental property to get more income and start building equity so that we can build eventually buy a house out here in Los Angeles. So bought this house back in St. Louis, and I was flying back and forth for projects. And I got a call to come back in town for a movie, and it was only if it was like a bigger project would I fly all the way back for an audition. But I was flying all the way back for a callback for a movie called All About Steve with Sandra Bernhardt, Sandra Bullock. I'm sorry, and I was on my way out there to audition for it, and they said, "Hey, while you're there, we've got this Disney show. It's a guest star role on this show that hasn't come out yet." And I was like, "Listen, I don't have time for that." And also, I had just my cousin had just passed away, so I was like, "I've got too much going on. I don't know if I'm going to do this audition." They said, "See if you could do it." So I arrived late. I called in. I found out that they were still there waiting for me. I went in. I was not off book because I had gotten the script right before I got on the airplane. And I was like, I'm gonna be studying my lines for the audition I'm flying out there for, not this bit role on this unseen Disney show. And turned out I was reading with a friend of mine, Jack Sanderson, who was an assistant to the producer, Peter Murrieta. And I didn't know that Peter was the exec producer at that point. And Peter I knew for years and years through the world of improv and through the Second City. But they tell me I was the quickest person ever hired for a Disney Channel show at the time. Because before I was off the lot, they were already asking for my availability for that job. And so I didn't book the movie role, but I sure booked the Disney's Wizards of Waverly Place, and I did that for the next 5 years.
Wow. It must have been incredible working on, such a beloved show for many, especially, with Selena Gomez during her breakout years. What was the dynamic, like on the set, and what did you love most about playing, Principal Laritate?
Well, it was fun to be able to like watch her star rise in real time, because when we were taping the show, none of the episodes had aired, and none of the things that she had recorded had dropped yet. So she wasn't a known talent. Nobody on the show was a known talent other than David DeLuise. People knew him, and Maria Canals Barrera, I think people had knew her from Camp Rock. I think that was before Wizards of Waverly Place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those were the only two people on the show, and then people knew me from The Ringer, but nobody had known the kids. Selena had done Barney when she was much younger, so there was no ego or anything like that, and it set a good precedent because there was never any ego issues with any of those kids. And they had every right to be. They were, Emmy-winning stars that were crushing the ratings. It was the highest rated show on cable television, not just kids cable, but cable television. And they were grounded. They were professional. And then, as the show went on, I would return there for the next seasons, and it'd be like, oh wow, everybody's still, nobody's too big for their britches, and everybody's still playing like a family, and it's still a great unit. I've been blessed to be on some really good ensemble shows that weren't, cut short by the egos of people up at the top. I've been very lucky in that respect.
So, there's one episode that really stood out to me, you're dancing where you're doing the version of The Jerk. And that came out, again, this is one of those things, it's even aging me. It came out in my senior year of high school. I tell you, man, when I heard my friends talking about it, I was just like, what are you talking about? I thought they were just being inappropriate. They're like, yeah, man, we were jerking on the stairs. And I'm like, is this a prank? Like, what's going on? You want to join our jerk team? And I'm like, well, what's going on? But then you even followed with the stanky leg. And that had to be fun to film.
Do the jerk.
Yeah.
And I don't
And
think
that's
anybody at Disney, I don't think anybody at Standards and Practices knew what that was, or knew what geeked up meant, or knew what any of that stuff meant. David Henry wrote it. Here he was, this, maybe he was 18 years old, maybe less than that. Here he was writing an episode of the show. They trusted him. They knew that it was like lingo because the kids were going crazy for it. But, the dance isn't inherently dirty or anything like that,
yeah.
unless you know what stanky leg means. I also, by the way, I randomly did a dance step, which turns out to be dabbing. Doing the dab.
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot about that.
If you go watch that, this is before the dab was a thing. I just happened to do it. I don't know what I was doing, but I went and somebody pointed it out to me. And if I posted a freeze frame of it on my Instagram a long time ago, and maybe even did a TikTok about it. But I did research, and it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a cultural thing until like a year or so after that. So I'm not saying I invented it, but I just happened to be doing a move that, years later became this huge cultural phenomenon in the middle of doing all those other things, the jerk and the stanky leg.
Oh man, good times, good times. So Charles, do you want to take over the next portion? Throw it back to the year 2000.
I was looking for my car. No. Dude, where's my car? That to me, I love that.
That was fun.
But yeah, so let's dive into that. Dude, where's my car? Had a smaller role in that. You were the arcade guard. That was pretty cool. It was funny.
Yeah.
I was recollecting earlier, and I was just like, wait, he played the guard. Yeah. And it dawned on me. So definitely a memorable movie for me. I definitely was like, dang, that's it's awesome. So tell me, where were those actual bubble suits you guys were wearing, or should we call them space suits?
They're interstellar spacesuits, as Michael Bowers would say. They were made by the costume department, and they were very protective of those suits, because if you sat down in them, they'd pop. So you had to stay standing in them
Okay.
when you were wearing them.
Okay.
And what may not be obvious at first glance is those things are hot, because it's like being inside of a greenhouse. You got the hot sets of the light, or hot lights of the set hitting it. It's coming inside. It's trapped inside. So all of our sweat and all of the condensation would be on the inside. You'd want to get the damn thing off, and they're like, well, we can't take it off you because, we're worried about, it getting popped. It's going to take so long to put on that it's going to waste time on production. So we'd have to stay in them. We'd have to stay standing. And then, for that one scene where we're walking them out to the big house, we wake them up out of that shed and we take them out into the field. There were record temperatures in Los Angeles that day. It's like 117 degrees or something like that for that day.
Wow.
And they had to, they had a generator out in the middle of the field cranking air conditioning, and they would take the hoses and put the hoses inside of our suits between takes. So the least pleasant and least memorable part of that whole production were those damn bubble wrap jumpsuits.
Oh wow. That's I could
But of all the movies I've been on, they had the best craft services.
One.
They had the best food. They had lobster tails being boiled out in a giant because there was so many late night shoots, because so many of the scenes happened late at night. So we were shooting all night. We would get there at right at sundown and get into makeup and everything. We'd be there all night and work until sunrise. So some of those nights they would make it special for us by having lobster tails. I had never had Persian watermelon before. You know that yellow watermelon? They had that.
Ooh,
Service.
yeah,
They had
100%.
great food on that set.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's always been a thought. I imagine it's been a thought of everyone's, right? I totally would do it though, just to try. But how did you land the role in such a cult classic? And I would add into that, were there any funny or, surprising audition stories that you could throw at us?
Um, I'm trying. I try to go back, and I don't remember much about the audition for that role. Um, I do remember there was a table read. I remember I got cast rather quickly in that one. There was a table read before we shot it on the Fox lot. Um, and I used to be a smoker, pretty heavy smoker, and Ashton Kutcher was a smoker as well. So we took a break halfway through the script, and I went out to smoke a cigarette. He went out to smoke a cigarette. He was already working on that '70s show at that point. I was like,
wow.
"You're on that '70s show, aren't you?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I think he had seen me in The Ringer, so we were talking very briefly. And we got to know each other over the course of the production. He was really cool. Danny Liner, the director, was not up for him and Sean improvising at all. And I think it's because it was one of his earlier projects, and he did not want to take a chance with, you know, with improvisation and stuff like that. You know, with The Ringer, we were working with Barry Blaustein, who had like a Saturday Night Live background, and the Fairley brothers, who love improv too, and they don't have a problem with that. But Danny Liner was very upset about anybody changing anything or trying a new line a new way. Because there's one line that I had, and no funny business, when we tell them to like sit there, you know, before they knock us over the head with the fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
And I said, what if I say no horsing off? And those guys both cracked up when I said it, and I was like, all right. And Danny said, don't say that. And I was like, can I do one time where I say no horsing off? And he was like, no, don't. I was like, okay. And then I figured, well, you know, I'm not one of the leads, so, you know, it's not my place to come in and, you know, mess with the script that much. But then, like, you know, I would see, you know, Ashton and Sean try to pitch him lines, things that they wanted to try out, and he was not down for it. But, you know, everybody works at their own speed and has their own process, and he did a great film, you know, without any improv involved.
Adam, do you have any questions on that one? Because I know that's just a mecca, movie. So
Yeah, so I was kind of curious. So there's that scene where Mr. Zoltan himself, Mr. House Sparks, you guys are having the whole meeting and things like that, you know, the Zoltan meeting. That scene. There was times where like he would, you know, you were talking about popping the suit, and that's what they were worried about. Like he would like smack someone's back or something. You would hear a pop sound. Like, do you know if that legit was happening? I know you come in a little bit later, but
I can't say for sure. I don't think it was ever written in the script about popping, so that might have been just something that happened and they added in post, or
okay,
something that maybe Danny was cool about that specific moment.
gotcha. But during that Zoltan scene, it looked like you guys had a red hot chili pepper situation there, you know, going on with the pillows covering you guys up. Were you guys actually, you know, rocking out in that scene with doing all of that, or was there a bit more wardrobe covering y'all up?
No, we had like a little flesh sock covering us up, which is kind of standard for that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Which they never mentioned, they just said, you know, without the suits on. So I thought the joke was going to be that we were going to still be in like the black tank tops and black shorts that we had on under the suits, and that those guys would have their street clothes on under our suits. I thought that would be hilarious. I thought that was a hilarious joke. But then they said, okay, and then you guys come out there and you're naked, you're going to have a pillow over yourself. I was like, that wasn't in the script. So I talked to my agent and said, hey, they're having us be nude in this, and that wasn't in the script. And they said, well, are they making you be completely nude? I said, no, they're having us put like a flesh sock on. And they said, Well, technically you're not nude, so you got to do it. And I was like, all right.
Well, everything's got something around to go around.
I've always had body image issues, and the idea of me being like, I specifically would not go out on some things because they wanted me topless, and I'm like, yeah, because you want to see the big guy get topless without his shirt, and you want to make fun of how he looks. So I specifically didn't even do projects that had that sort of thing in it. And then when that came up, I was not pleased. It did get a huge reaction in the movie, and I'm happy for that. But yeah, not pleased about that. And we weren't 100% naked underneath it all.
Gotcha.
Although I have been naked.
I always
on stage before.
Oh man.
I've always wondered that with the acting thing. Like, are they really actually naked?
Not in that case.
Sometimes I found out, like, yeah, no, they straight
Plus,
up.
I think nowadays, more often than not, they have like an intimacy coordinator. You know, even
Wow.
with a kiss, you know, much less nudity. I just did an episode of Jimmy Kimmel where I played Tim Walz, and they had Tim Walz and JD Vance making out after the vice presidential debate, and like after we did our first take, the director came up and said, "Oh, by the way, is everybody okay with the kiss and how that's going?" And I said, I hopped into character as Tim Walz, and I was like, "Yeah, you know, usually we have an intimacy coordinator with us on the campaign trail. Joe travels with 5 of them."
Oh man. So Charles, I know you had another question, man. I could read your mind there.
Oh yeah. So I know we're coming up on the timing and stuff like that, and I'm in some bad service, so I just want to make sure I can get something out.
Yeah.
But definitely wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind, one of your, if you wouldn't mind, like, I guess how would you ask it? Acting out or doing one of your lines from The Ringer, or even what's, I mean, your favorite from any movie type thing. Is that something cool we can see and
If I
experience?
had known in advance, I would have even had. Oh, wait a minute! I might even have the glasses here for you.
Oh,
Hold on a
Oh
second.
man.
good stuff.
I may or may
That
not.
lady
Don't
was
get your
one of my
hopes up.
favorite lines too, man.
Don't get your hopes up, but I may have. Is this them?
Talking and hanging out with you were the hopes up already.
Here we go.
Oh man. What'd you do, Charles?
We're gonna find out.
Did I tell you I got a watch? My aunt sent it to me. Not my Aunt Helen. My Aunt Ruth.
That was golden. That was golden.
Love it. Love it.
There it is. And I have had these glasses. These glasses, nobody's ever seen me wear them and not be in character either. But I had these glasses since high
They
school.
are okay.
I was in high school. I went into a thrift store, and back then, people would like just donate their glasses to a thrift store, and I guess maybe people would take the frames and get new lenses put in or whatever. But I found those, and I started doing my character Frederick that I was talking about.
Yeah.
And he would always wear those glasses, and so I auditioned for The Ringer with those glasses on, and then they said they wanted to put it in the contract that I couldn't do that character, any other character, with those glasses. And I was like, well, that's my character. I came to this. And so they convinced me. Barry Blaustein was like, he was on Saturday Night Live when Gilbert Gottfried was on.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, people don't really remember Gilbert Gottfried being on that show because he got hired because he did all these characters. And then he wanted to say that he owned these characters, and Saturday Night Live wouldn't let him say that he owned the characters, so he never did some of his greatest characters on SNL.
Wow.
And so Barry was like, and this is before Gilbert had kind of had like a, you know, a big resurgence, you know, before he passed away. But at this point, not that many people outside of comedy knew who Gilbert was. And Barry was like, you know, I saw a great talent not get the exposure he deserved because of wanting to own something that you can't really own. He said, "I recommend that you do it, and let them have the right to say whether you can use the glasses or not." So that what I just did for you may be a legal offense, but I don't think after 10 years or 20 years anybody's going to give a damn. But
Like, go on. I got you. I got you.
Yeah. Don't tell any lawyers. Don't tell any lawyers. Um, but the prop department lost them
Oh no.
at first, so that's why I wear those green goggles in the swimming pool scene, because that was the first scene that we
Oh,
shot. The first scene that we shot was a swimming pool scene, and I was so upset because I was like, "This is how we're introducing the character to everybody." That wasn't my first scene in the movie, but this is the first shot that I'm making of the movie without the glasses, and I was so pissed off, and I was worried that they had truly lost them, but they found them
That,
and were able to make a duplicate of them.
that brings up such a serious question for me, if I may, Adam. I
yeah.
Sure.
because I dabble in the world a little bit, right? And I see, most recently I was at Retro Fest down in Arkansas, and the gentleman that created and kind of illustrated, from what I understood, Sub-Zero and Scorpion for Mortal Kombat. The
Mhm.
biggest and most interesting thing that I identified with them, and it's like just jaw dropped, they authenticate and do everything from traveling, booking. They're their own agents in a way,
Mhm.
and it was really really. So when I hear that, like, those are your glasses. Those are your, like, when you do an auction, are those like something that's attached to that idea? And it's like to realize, like, the music industry is very much the same, where it's just like, man, the
Mhm.
freedoms back, we can say now, as old as me, Adam, are, as well as you yourself, back in the day, it's so restrictive. And to even have a voice then, in comparison to now, it's
Mhm.
like, man, like, there are so many giant companies that own everything now, took away so many, I mean, took away so many classics that we'll never even see because of the restriction of allowing life, just allowing people to be people. And it was just amazing to, go down the line of the voice actors and actors, and they all same thing. They're like, oh, I can't wait to get to that point where I can say, this is me. I came up with this. I developed these products for me under my brand. So I would say that is very commendable to say you set a the bar to say that sacrifice is a real thing, to keep
Yeah.
the culture alive, to keep people laughing and smiling and remembering, even though it was a heartfelt sacrifice you had to make. The world would have never known that character if you didn't make that decision, and
Yeah.
that's real. That's a real
Truly.
thing. So, praise you and bless you for allowing the world to know that I guess I don't want to put in a psycho mindset, but that person in you, that character. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
Back to you,
Bill,
Adam.
yeah, no, I just want to say thank you, so much for, sharing laughs with us, some stories, even the processes you endured, and much more. Before we send this out, I know you have near and dear to your heart working with, the Special Olympics, and you also, help people out with, improv. Would you like to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, I used improv with Special Olympics. I was able to, on the set of the Ringer. I worked with all the Special Olympians. We did a special improv workshop one of the days, and then I later went on to coach improv to the Special Olympians, the global messengers of Special Olympians. And those are Special Olympians that go out and speak on behalf of Special Olympics to Congress, or to local government, or to fundraise with large corporations. So I was happy to be able to help out in that way, and I started teaching improv. I learned improv at Second City in Chicago, And then I started this company called the Improv Trick, and we teach for organizations. We also teach for people with disabilities. We also teach people who just want to learn improv. I teach online too. So anybody wants to find out about that, they can go to theimprovtrick.com. And I can help them, their organization, or even them as an individual learn how they can use the skills of improv to be more confident, to communicate, to listen better, and hopefully to make more connections with other people.
We need more laughs in our life. And I know there's so many people out there these days that want to do stand-up comedy, and what better way to start with improv, right?
Yep. Yeah, because you learn how to create material that way. But even above and beyond that, it's the confidence that you need to get up there to do anything, whether it's acting or stand-up or public speaking or just giving a presentation in front of 3 or 4 people.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, I definitely appreciate you being on. It's been a pleasure. You have
Thank you.
more to your career that you've been a part of, like Galaxy Quest, the Rum Diary. And hopefully we get to cross paths, in the future and could chat about those too.
I would love that. Stay in touch.
You got it. Well, hey, thank you again for joining us. You have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Archives with Adam podcast. We hope you enjoyed this week's deep dive into this week's guest stories and insights. And don't forget to stay updated on upcoming episodes only at the Archives with Adam podcast on Facebook and the Archives with Adam on Instagram. Catch you in the next episode.